Sanders, I think, deserves a lot of the credit for positioning himself to win over the voters that he needed. In 2016, when Bernie Sanders ran against Hillary Clinton, he was the candidate of a faction of the party.
So let me tell you what this campaign is about and what makes it different than any other campaign that's out there.
He did quite well with young, white, liberal voters, but not very well in communities of color. And that was a key reason why he lost to Hillary Clinton. She ran up huge margins in southern states where most of the Democratic voters are African American, but she also did very well among Latino voters here in California and elsewhere in the country. In the ensuing 4 years, he really went to school on what he had done wrong and what he needed to do in order to do better. His campaign really never stopped between 2016 and 2020. They kept a lot of their operations going, and particularly in African American and Latino communities, they did a lot of work to try to bolster his outreach to voters in those communities, and we're starting to see all of that work pay off. A week ago, we saw Sanders do very well in Nevada, in the caucuses there, where a lot of the voters are Latino. And now this week, he's been trying to beat Joe Biden in South Carolina, a state where African Americans make up about 60% of the Democratic electorate. But there's no question that Sanders has done a much better job in reaching out to those voters than he had done 4 years ago, and that's a real important reason why he is doing so much better now than he did then. We did a poll just recently in California, a Latino group, African American organization, an Asian American organization, got together to sponsor a poll to take a close look at the political attitudes of non-white voters who often get somewhat short shrift in a lot of polls because minority communities, by virtue of being minorities, are smaller, so they're harder to analyze in polls. So this poll took a very careful look at each of these communities and tried to understand why Sanders has been doing so much better. A key finding was that across the board, he's really become the candidate of voters under 40. Sanders does really well with younger Latinos, not quite as well with older Latinos, because the Latino population tends to be young. His support among younger Latinos becomes very important. Similarly, in the African American community, Biden has done pretty well with older African American voters, especially older women. Sanders, however, is doing much better among younger African American voters, and we're likely to see that trend continue. And then we did a second poll with UC Berkeley, looking just at the California electorate. And we see in that poll, which is out Friday morning, that Sanders has a 2-to-1 lead here in California, ahead of his closest rival, Senator Warren from Massachusetts. He is likely to be in position to win a large majority of the state's delegates. California has more delegates than any other state in the country going to the Democratic convention. So winning a majority of those delegates could put him in a really strong position to have the number of delegates he would need to actually win the Democratic nomination this year. And it's that support from Latinos, from younger voters, as well as from voters who describe themselves as very liberal, that form the key pillars of Sanders' support here in California.